Making a video game is a difficult task. The amount of communication, dedication, and hard work that goes into each and every release is staggering, and there's always the fear upon release that the game will flop, and the baby you've dedicated years of your life to making simply vanishes from people's minds. But every now and then, you finally show your creation to the world, and it's met with adoring praise. It's a genuinely euphoric feeling, and it's what every developer dedicates their entire work life pursuing. But in more modern times, that initial phase isn't where the story ends. You need to keep those players around, build a relationship with them, and work alongside them to keep the game in top shape. But what happens when that relationship turns sour? When your game bursts out of the gates running, but begins to quickly wither away? What happens when the hubris view of the past blinds you to the audience that are in the here and now? Today we're going to be talking about a game with the most creative, yet unorganized development team. A game bred and raised from corporate greed, and a game that when brimming with potential managed to fall flat. That game is of course called Now, like any story, it's best to start at the beginning, but in the case of Royale, the initial start point of the game isn't all that clear, as the game has actually had several launches over its history. The first launch was actually as a Battle Royale game mode for hi-rez's already established game Paladins that was launched in February of 2018, which closely followed the standard Paladins gameplay, but having the shop system for powering up your character replaced with finding the items in chests scattered around the large map. They would, however, very soon decide that this wasn't the direction they wanted to go in, and would take the game offline where they would turn it into a separate but still closely linked game, Paladins Royale. This is closer to what we see in the current game, but with the absence of any kind of class system, a more bloated weapon pool, a slightly different map, and just a lower polish quality that's expected of an early version of a game. But overall, you can see the initial launch version really taking shape here. And then finally, in June of 2018, the official alpha launch for the game would hit Steam, and from here, we're going to be taking the recap of events a bit slower. Upon the game hitting Steam, it absolutely exploded in popularity due to it being released perfectly in time with its main and at the time only real competitor Fortnite's servers going into maintenance for several hours. This led to almost the entirety of the Fortnite community at its prime trying the game out. However, they would predictably end up going back to Fortnite after a short time. But that short burst was all the game needed to get a massive boost in popularity, picking up large content creators who would start playing the game as either their main or second main game, such as Shroud, Kefri, and even Ninja for a short time, and it's easy to see why. With the game having 5 unique classes, each with their own playstyle coupled with their own class-specific weapon and pool of abilities, there was a lot of different and fun ways to play the game. On top of this, the game had a constant sense of progression, with its forge system bringing value to anything you find on the map, as you could use it to craft yourself your extremely powerful class weapon, upgrade one of your armor pieces to increase your maximum health, or upgrade your abilities to give you that edge in fights. On top of the popularity and fun gameplay, hi-rez also started sending out surveys to the playbase to try and give the players a voice in the development process. With such a good start, it's kind of hard to imagine how it could have turned out the way it did. However, it wouldn't take long before the first hiccup in the road was felt. On June 20th, hi-rez would release the Early Access 3 patch, bringing with it a few balance changes, but also had the major change of making the class-specific weapons that define the class's individual gameplay so heavily taken out of the forge, and instead made them extremely rare drop from chests. This caused the game's first large-scale community outcry, as many classes whose playstyle was focused around their class weapons, such as the Engineer, Warrior, and Assassin, now felt gutted, as they were forced to pray to the RNG gods if they'd get to play their class fully in any particular game. On top of that, this change made it very unfair to go up against any class weapon-based class who'd gotten lucky that game, as they would simply have far better tools than you would.
Please don't go live with that. Okay, somebody clip this. Please don't do that.
However, this would soon turn into a feel-good moment for the community, as only 5 days after the change, hi-rez had acknowledged that the change was frowned upon and reverted it, leading to the community truly feeling as though their voice mattered. However, this wouldn't last, as an even worse patch dropped only a couple of weeks later on July 6th that gave the game the assault rifle and the SMG. These two guns were so extremely broken that it made using anything else, including class weapons, pointless, as they simply shredded through anything that was put in front of them, with the time to kill of almost half of any other gun in the game game, while also being hard to miss as they were full auto hit scan guns with low recoil. Needless to say, the community got lit ablaze, as they pleaded for hi-rez to do with this patch as they did the other, but eventually ended up coming to a begrudging compromise by having them nerfed into a more reasonable position. However, having these two instances so close together started to build resentment between hi-rez and the community, with hi-rez feeling as though people weren't allowing the room for change that hi-rez wanted to be able to experiment with, and the community feeling as though hi-rez is being too rash with major changes to the way the game is fundamentally played. This would end up culminating in spectacular fashion, only a month later. On August 31st, 2018, hi-rez would release Early Access Patch 8, removing classes completely from the game. This caused a mass exodus from the community, with almost all notable content creators leaving the scene as well as 60% of the player base. This would be something they would obviously pull a semi-U-turn on very quickly, as only a few days later it was announced that classes would be making a reappearance, but it's also clear they wanted to hold out on that for as long as possible, as the update bringing them back wouldn't release for another month and a half. On top of this, they didn't end up coming back in the way they were before, instead being replaced with a soft class system where all abilities and weapons were usable by all classes, but each class had a pool of abilities they could use better than the others. This, however, was not enough consolation for the community, and most people who left would stay gone for good, and the developers turned from unwilling to work with the community to downright aggressive with them, with the CEO of the company even jumping into a prominent streamer's chat and harassing him and his community for not liking the changes. With the final nail in the coffin for the game coming only a few weeks later on October 26th, when the decision to fill the game with bots was made. While this might sound like a good idea on paper due to the dropping player base, in practice it significantly reduced the quality of the game, as you were now finding as few as 8 other human opponents in a 100 player battle royale during the lowest points of the day, with it being very easy to spot who is and isn't a bot due to the terrible AI.
Yo, is this a bot? Is that a bot?
Because of all this, the game went stagnant. Even with the console releases coming after the major controversy, the game had just been burned too bad and had too many bots to be able to foster a large community again. And after 2 more years of limbering on with growingly infrequent updates, on August 17th of 2020, it was officially stated that Realm Royale would no longer be given major support from hi-rez, now only having the promise of its servers being maintained and major bugs fixed. Now, it's easy to see why all of this happened. The bigwigs at hi-rez saw the initial success, followed by the predictable downturn because of everyone going back to Fortnite, and instead of sticking to what made the game unique, tried to get a cut of some of the Fortnite pie. Slowly stripping away the things that made the game unique, such as the single shot projectile based gameplay, and slowly replacing it with full auto hit scan weapons. Removing the classes so they could sell more skins, and try to move the looting system away from the Forge to make it easier for Fortnite players to immediately understand. It's upsetting to see it go down this route, as all of the developers outside of management very clearly had a lot of love and passion for the game, were genuinely sympathetic, and could tell when there was something the player base wouldn't want. If development didn't have such an uncoordinated management, I feel as though the game could have still been thriving to this day, as it's rare anyone I've introduced to the game hasn't found themselves enjoying it, but unfortunately it was led by a group that was fueled by lines on a graph, and that when faced with backlash became angry at the player base for not liking the changes being made. This was honestly a story that I've been wanting to tell for years, as I absolutely fell in love with the game at launch and went through a genuine grief period at losing it. But I can quite happily say that after all this time apart from the game, upon my return I actually found myself having a lot of fun again, and I do genuinely believe that if given another chance by hi-rez, this game could still yet succeed. In fact, there's actually a lot of hints that development for the game might be restarting in some capacity, as people on Reddit have found a lot of evidence pointing to such, and even hints from hi-rez execs saying that there might be something in the works.
What?
And if that's true, then if any of Realm Royale's developers stumble on this video, a list of honest feedback from me as a returning veteran player will be found in the description. But for everyone else, this is where our story ends. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I hope you consider checking out some of my other videos I post alongside this one. I'm only just starting this channel, so any kind of feedback would be genuinely appreciated. If you're falling into boredom with gaming, as so many are right now, I urge you to give Realm Royale a look, as not only is it still a genuinely fun game, especially with some friends, but letting hi-rez know that interest for the game will still be there when they're ready for it would be amazing. That's all for now. Thank you all for watching, I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you all have a good rest of your day.